Hello spooky crew, and thanks for coming back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if this is your first time here. My name is Alex and thanks for coming to my spooky corner of the internet. I recently watched a docu-series called Hellier. I'm very late on the Hellier train, and let me tell you, it weirded me out a bit. And I'm someone that typically doesn't get freaked out with any sort of documentary or paranormal reality television because I can separate myself from the experience. I don't do the same for horror movies though. I let myself get more immersed. But when I'm watching documentaries and TV shows, I tend to look at them with a more critical eye, so I don't really get freaked out about it. So the fact that I got weirded out by Hellier is a really big deal. Now, what freaked me out so much about it? Well, it's the center of the story is focused on something that I had kind of seen when I was younger. And the show also emphasized the idea of synchronicity. It's freaky to be able to relate to something so quickly by just watching it. But before I dive in further, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and click on that notification bell so you'll know when I upload a video. If you subscribe and you don't click on that bell, you may never hear from me again. But know that I do upload videos every Monday, so mark those calendars. Finally, if you want more spooky stuff, ghost hunting articles and resources and all that good stuff, then check out my website at thespookystuff.com. Alright, let's get started. I've had a few freaky experiences throughout my life. As every paranormal researcher and investigator, we all seem to have a very similar origin story. We had experiences when we were younger. One of these experiences was seeing something strange. I can only describe it as seeing footprints that didn't seem like they came from a human or an animal. Now, when I saw these footprints, I was in a small town in the tri-state area of Kentucky and I was visiting my grandmother's family. I'm not going to say the name of the town here since I don't want to put the spotlight on my family or risk anything, but it's in Kentucky, it's in a tri-state area. Probably narrows it down, but oh well. And this was a trip that I made every summer with my grandmother. She would see her mother, her sister, her siblings, all that good stuff. And it was very rural. It is very rural still. It's a very, very tiny town right on the side of a mountain. There's a river a couple miles away. It's very small. Houses are super cheap there still. So you can imagine when I started watching Hellier, which is the documentary series by Greg and Dana Newkirk and Carl Pfeiffer, I was freaked out. So full disclosure, I didn't really know what it was about. I had a bunch of friends who watched it and they were like, oh my gosh, you need to see it. It's so good and freaky and scary. And I'm like, which is why I sat on it for a little bit because I'm not the biggest fan of paranormal series, I'll be honest. So I was really hesitant about Hellier, but I'm like, you know what? Why not? I think I decided this maybe a month ago. I was like, let's give it a try. It was on Amazon Prime. I didn't have to pay for it. Let's dive in. Now, I knew it was about some kind of freaky creature, based on the marketing for it and the images and everything, but I didn't know any details. I only knew about the Newkirks from Planet Weird and I really liked their material, and I also follow them on social media. What I'm saying is I didn't really know much about Hellier at all. So imagine my surprise when this docuseries is about the exploration of goblins and other weird things in the state of Kentucky. I know Kentucky. My grandparents are buried in Kentucky and my mom passed away in Kentucky, in the same little tri-state area town that I was telling you about earlier. The place where I would go every summer to visit family. So Hellier takes place in a town in Kentucky called Hellier. And it's a couple hours away from the town that I would go visit. And all of the places that Greg and Dana Newkirk visited and talked about, I'm very familiar with. I mean, I even knew what Point Pleasant was when I was growing up. Appalachian folklore, legends, all that stuff, all the freakiness with the forest and the darkness. Yeah, I knew about it. My first paranormal experience happened in Kentucky. And the town of Hellier looks a lot like the town where my grandma's family lives. It's very familiar. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of Hellier, but if you haven't watched it yet, please go watch it. So it opens up talking about synchronicity and everything, and of course, there's a story of this man named David M. Christie who contacts Greg Newkirk telling him about how he's seen these little creatures and goblins invading his home, and he sends photos of footprints that he's captured. And I swear to you all, when the picture of those footprints came onto the screen, I about had a heart attack. I almost fell off the couch, and I yelled for my boyfriend, and of course he doesn't know what the heck I'm talking about. I'm like, Chris, get in here! And I tried to explain like what this picture meant to me, and he's like, okay. Day in the life of living with me. I just didn't know what to think. I was like, holy cow. I saw these footprints when I was a kid, and I'd always ask my mama, my great-grandmother, I'd ask mama, what's going on with these footprints? Who do they belong to? And she didn't really say anything. She's like, they definitely belong to some sort of little creature. Like, just very nonchalant about it, like, you know. And I would see these footprints in the soil, like when I would go down with her when she went to her garden to pick green beans and everything. I was very familiar with this footprint. I was trying to think like maybe it was like a lizard or like a big lizard, a deformed bear. Like I didn't know, like I don't know that climate or that landscape at all. I mean, at the time I was a kid from California, from a beach town. I didn't know what all this stuff was. If there wasn't a palm tree attached to it, I didn't know. Anyway, I've seen these footprints before. Flash forward to several years later, and my first like high school boyfriend was talking to me about weird stuff. I forgot what had brought us to that conversation. It's been like 20 years since. But he was telling me of a small goblin-like creature he saw when he was a kid. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. That's strange. Then I find out that his best friend at the time also saw the same thing and was convinced that it was living in his room. Now, at the time, they were living in Virginia, and I was still in San Diego. So I'm like, okay, weird goblin creature. I didn't really think anything of it. Like, for real, I'm like, okay, are you on drugs? Like, what? My boyfriend drew a picture of the footprints that belonged to the creature that he saw, and no joke, it was the same footprints I saw when I was a kid in this small little Kentucky town. And again, I fall over. I guess maybe when I was 15 years old, that's the first fall over. I was like, what? That's what? I'm freaking out a little bit. Seriously, like, cue the freak out. It was going on. I'm sitting here and I'm trying to tell my boyfriend, like, I've seen these footprints too, but I didn't see the creature, but I saw the footprints. Of course, he's freaking out because I gave him some validation about it all. And he calls his best friend and tells him that I saw the same footprints, and he freaks out too. So I basically gave validation to these two teenage guys that were like, what? Believe it or not, this isn't where the story ends either. About 5 years later, so I was probably like 20 or 21 at the time, I became really good friends with this guy, completely platonic. I did shows with him, you know, like musical theater and everything. He lived over in a rural part of San Diego. Well, not really rural, but it's definitely a smaller town called El Cajon. And if you're from San Diego, hey, you know El Cajon. I mean, there's like hills and everything. I mean, we're talking very East County here. His computer desk was next to the sliding glass door that goes into the backyard. So he's working on his computer. The sliding glass door is here, so he can look into his backyard if he just glances over. He notices something moving outside by the sliding glass door, the window, and he looks. He sees the same freaking creature, this small goblin-like thing, and he looked at it, it stared back at him, he looked at it, it stared back, and then it just walked away. Like, it's cool, just wanted to check you out, I'm gonna walk away. And nothing more happened. He never saw it again at that point. I don't know if he ever saw it again after that, but it was really weird. And he was also really uncomfortable telling me the story, but he was like, oh, I have to tell somebody. And so at this point, 20-year-old Alex is thinking, okay, so this is the third time now that I've heard about someone seeing this weird creature. And I had asked my friend to describe it, and I didn't tell him about my ex-boyfriend or his best friend seeing the same creature. I honestly kept that to myself because I didn't want to freak him out. But internally, I was wigging out. I'm like, are you kidding me? This is like the third story now. What the heck is going on? So that made it now 3 people in my life that had seen this type of creature. But after that, never saw it again, never heard about it again, never saw the footprints again, nada. So when I saw Hellier, that's why I freaked out. I mean, it had been like, what, 15 years since I had last heard about any kind of story like this. I think I just revealed my age. But anyway, this is why I was freaking out so much. What's interesting is that in Hellier, I think it's Greg Newkirk that has this theory about these creatures like maybe gather near caves or mine shafts. Of course, in Kentucky, you have caves and mines all over the place. I'm pretty sure there's some in Virginia too, like in like the coastal area, as I get used to the geography out here on the East Coast. But El Cajon, California is thousands of miles away from the Appalachian area of Kentucky, and even more miles away from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Like, what is happening here? So this is super confusing, right? You have the footprints that I saw in Kentucky, and then my ex and his best friend seeing this creature in Virginia, and then my friend seeing this creature in El Cajon, California. So I don't know what's going on. I mean, San Diego has its share of caves, and of course El Cajon has really high hills and some mountains too, depending on how far you drive. And it could all be a big stretch. Hellier ended up inspiring me to look up more information about the goblins in Kentucky. Yeah, believe it or not, I never did any research on this. I just kind of stored it away in my brain as, okay, well, this is something to talk about maybe in the future, or this might be an interesting party story. And I also became super focused on ghosts. The whole goblin thing, keep it in the brain. I decided to look up more information because Hellier did give some tidbits about a situation in an area called Kelly, Kentucky, and this thing had happened in 1955. Now, what happened was that this family, the Sutton family, arrived at the police station in Hopkinsville on August 21st, 1955, claiming to have been under siege by a group of little green men. There were a large number of witnesses, with 11 people total. That included 8 adults and 3 children, and they lived in this 3-room house in Kelly, Kentucky, with no like running water. I mean, we're talking 1955 Kentucky. It was pretty rural, you know? And the family said that these creatures were about 3.5 feet tall, and they had perfectly round, oversized head, and the arms extended down to the ground, and the hands had talons, and the eyes glowed with a yellowish light. When I saw the picture and the feet and the possible footprints, I was like, what? Okay, because they're very similar. Also, the family noted that these little green men, their bodies gave off an eerie shimmer in the light of the new moon, and they said that it looked like their skin was made out of silver metal. And of course, a family friend saw the UFO land because, you know, that's what happens. That neighbor described the UFO as a silver object that was really, really bright, and the exhaust had all colors of the rainbow. So we're talking about some fabulous little green men here. The family would have never noticed that their house had been visited by little green men had it not been for their dog barking incessantly and alerting them to the problem, which makes me wonder, like, would these little green men have snuck up on them and taken over the house, or would they have just done their own thing with their observations and then leaving? I don't know. Yeah, so technically we're going into aliens here, and I'm not like really familiar with UFOs and aliens. I mean, I've read about encounters. I'm not deep in the UFO world, honestly, so this is definitely out of my league, and I'm sure I got a lot incorrect when it comes to this. But I kind of wondered, though, what if these little green men arrived and decided to settle here, and they ended up like going into the caves and mine shafts and making a home, and then they started migrating around the country or even the world? Or was this just an isolated incident? Could it be that the footprints I saw in Kentucky and the incidences in Virginia and California, I mean, maybe they're just all little incidents of their own, and they're not even related to each other? Also, I did put a link to the Kelly Hopkinsville case if you want to check it out in more detail and find out more for yourself. So my question for you is, have you seen Hellier? And if you have, I'd love to know what you think. And also, have you ever seen a creature like this? I mean, is it just me, or is it just like the Newkirks in the documentary? I mean, was it only David M. Christie? I don't know. Seriously, I wigged out when I saw those footprints. It brought back all these childhood memories, and it really freaked me out. So let me know what you think in the comments. And before you go, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and again, turn on that notification bell so you'll know when I upload a new video. And also, as always, feel free to share this video with your friends and family who also enjoy the spooky stuff. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next round.